Shalom, shalom, Israel. This is Judah for Life, Community Live. Once again, as always, give praise to Heavenly Father, Yahuwah, for another blessed day to bring forth His word and His truth. In today's lesson, we're going to be exposing Samuel Gompers. Samuel Gompers. Right? Now, before we get into this information, because I'm about to make a part 2, let me show you once again that the information that I'm bringing out on my channel is making these Jewish people mad because they keep on constantly flagging my videos. Now, the last time I told you, they flagged one of my lessons talking about the Germany's Black Holocaust, right? Now, I just received the email a while ago, no longer than 20 minutes ago, and they sent this. They flagged 2 of my lessons. Okay, now I put these lessons up 5 days ago. Okay, 5 to 6 days ago. And I told you that they were watching what we were saying. So, remember I told you a while ago, a couple of months back, that they had flagged my lesson on Fake Jews Exposed Part 1 and Jewish-owned slave ships, right? And just recently, they put an age restriction on this lesson, Germany's Black Holocaust. Now, they turn right back around and they flag this lesson. Jewish people in their lives. Look what they did. They flagged it. And then they come right back and they flag this lesson. The secret relationship between blacks and Jews. So what am I saying that these Jewish people are not liking? I gotta be saying something, right? Something it has to have some type of truth to it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm coming from these books that the Nation of Islam has put out. I came from this book right here, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, Part 1. We're going to be coming from this book again, Jews Selling Blacks Auction Sales. And we're going to be coming from this book right here, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, Volume 2. Okay? Now, like I say, I highly advise you to get these books, because ever since I've been reading from these books and tying these things to the scriptures, these people keep on flagging my lessons. Like it's something I'm saying that's pissing them off. So, what I want to do is, okay, because I'm almost finished reading this, alright, so I want to go into this section right here, okay? Jews and black labor. Okay? So it says, since the days of Columbus' forays into the Western Hemisphere, Jews had always been important suppliers of black slave labor to the plantation economy. They were also major merchants and dealers in the products of slave labor, especially in the highly profitable sugar and cotton trades. And they had a huge stake in all related enterprises. Okay? It goes on to say here that, one second. It goes on to say that, so it is not, it says, let's see. So it should not be surprising. One second, Israel. One second. It says, so it should not be surprising to find them in leadership roles helping to manage the reorganization of the economically critical American labor system after the chaos of the Civil War. All right. Now let's drop down here. Right. It says here, author, poet, earlier civil rights activist, and Southerner James Weldon Johnson grew up in this era in the 1870s, right? Because when these Jim Crow laws going on, our ancestors were enslaved on the plantations, working for free, and then all of a sudden you got the Civil War pop up. Abraham Lincoln pops up on the scene, and he tries to do his Emancipation Proclamation crap and try to set the slaves so-called free, and then they get jobs, and that's when your interest loans come into play, and making profits, and they are working, and then they get paid so many wages, and then they're not benefiting from it. They're not getting any type of benefits. You know what I'm saying? Because they are constantly being put in debt. Now, so let's read this. So it says, all the most interesting things that came under, he says, all the most interesting things that came under my observation were being done by colored men. He's talking about this stuff up here. Talking about, they were doing jobs on steamboats. There were steamboatsmen, draymen, masons, bricklayers, planters, bakers, carpenters, cigar makers, plasterers, barbers, and gardeners. They was doing all of this stuff, right? So this is what this guy is saying when he come on the scene. So he's saying he's seen all these black people do all this stuff, and he says here that talking about the black people, the color. He said the color man. So he says they drove the horse and mule teams. They built the houses. They laid the bricks. They painted the buildings and fences. They loaded and unloaded the ships. He says, when I was a child, I did not know that there existed such a thing as a white carpenter or bricklayer or painter or plaster or tinner. Right? He says the thought that white men might be able to load and unload the heavy drays of the big ships was too far removed from everyday life to enter my mind. So what is he saying? What is he talking about? He's saying up until his present day and age, he never known white folks to work like that. They were constantly getting serviced by our ancestors. So let's keep on going. So it says, indeed, it was once said that if a white man were ever seen in public doing any form of skilled labor, he would draw a crowd of gawking onlookers. It says, noted Southerner writer Thomas Nelson Page concurred. He says the black man, he said, was without a rival in the entire field of industrial labor throughout the South. 95% of all the industrial work of the southern states was in his hand, and he was fully competent to do it. He says every adult was either a skilled laborer or a trained mechanic. So he's seeing all these things that black folks are doing. Now let's jump over here to this section. White limits on black freedom. So now the white folks are getting mad now. So if you're working a job and you say you're working a union job, do you know who came up with that union label? So it says white limits on black freedom. If blacks after the Civil War harbored any delusion or post-plantation freedom and equality in the so-called white sense, President Andrew Johnson's newly appointed governor of Florida, William Marvin, set them straight. He explained the government's position to the black audience. He says, quote, "You must not think that because you are as free as white people, you are their equal. He says, you must not think that because you are as free as white people, you are their equal, because you are not. Quote, their new freedom, he explained, was an unintended byproduct of the Civil War, which he accurately pointed out had been a white man's war from start to finish, fought entirely over the material and political interests of white men. He continued, before the war, each of you was worth in dollars and cents to your owners, $800 or $1,000 or $1,500, worth more than 50 acres or 80 acres of land and a mule thrown in. He says, well, the president, in giving you your freedom, has taken so many dollars and cents from your old masters, and he thinks as I do, they have lost enough, and you by it have had enough given to you. So it goes on to say that this hostile and demeaning view of the black man and woman from a high official in the party of Lincoln signaled the fact that any progress blacks would make be entirely on their own, devoid of property, 90% illiterate, unorganized, utterly friendless, but rich in enemies. Blacks had only their labor and their faith in God from which draw sustenance on which to build a new reality in the steadily expounding industrial economy. In the meantime, the hordes of European whites who fully bought into the national post-war resentment toward the black man and woman felt entitled to do all the jobs blacks held. White laborers began to threaten and intimidate with growing regularly and intensity those enterprises that employ blacks. Quote, they further recategorized the skilled occupations as for whites only, while the unskilled work and deemed, he says, so they further recategorized the skilled occupation as for whites only, while the unskilled work was deemed nigger work. And they demanded that employers respect those racist definitions when hiring. As early as 1853, Frederick Douglass wrote that every hour sees the black man elbowed out of employment by some newly arrived immigrant, whose hunger and whose color are thought to give him a better title to place. Okay? So, now we're going over into this section. The Jewish presence in the earlier labor movement. The AFL-CIO, it says, it is to Samuel Gompers as much as to anyone else that the American labor movement owes its structure and characteristic strategies. Okay? Now, this is your guy who came up with the union. This man right here, Samuel Gompers. Samuel Gompers. This white man. This white man. Now, remember I keep on telling you that whenever you read something on Wikipedia, they're going to leave something out. They're going to give you what they want you to hear. But we're going to go into the book, into the secret relationship between black and Jews, and get more history, what they left out. So it says Samuel Gompers, born January 1850, and he died 1924, was an English-born American labor union leader and a key figure in American labor history. Okay? Now this guy was, he was born in London and he was a Jewish immigrant. Alright? And it says here that he talks about, you can read all this stuff on Wikipedia, and it says here that he mostly supported Democrats, but sometimes Republicans. He strongly opposed socialists, All right? Okay. So you can read about his life and things like that. So it says here that he was born in London, England, into a Jewish family that originally hailed from Amsterdam. Okay? When he was 6, Samuel was sent to the Jewish free school where he received a basic education, meaning, so he was sent to this Jewish school and he learned the Babylonian Talmud. Okay? Now, so let's get into his life on what he was on what our ancestors was up against, and what you people are up against today in this time frame and era with the union. When you say you working a union job and you're African, you're black, you're a Negro, the union is not for you. It's not benefiting you, and you're gonna find out why. Now, so let's go. So it says here that let's drop down here because I can't read it all because I'll run out of time. I want to get to the good parts. It says here, the National Labor Union and the Knights of Labor set out to organize all workers by the egalitarian strategy. Both failed, however, and unable to overcome the inbred racist proclivities of the white rank and file. The anti-Negro feeling was so intense, wrote one historian, that at the Bricklayers' 1871 convention, quote, two New York locals fought openly against admission of Negroes, and even against the establishment of the separate Negro locals. This widespread racist animus framed the 1880s emergence of the American Federation of Labor, the AFL, which would become the most dominant labor organization in American history, entirely designed to serve the interests of the white man. So it says here that, so here's Samuel Gompers, the same we just looked at. It says the AFL, formed in 1886, with its leadership began the imported product of Jewish union activism in Europe. Despite their bitter experience under the yoke of European anti-Semitism, Jews quickly assumed the leadership of the American labor movement and helped to engineer the racial policies specifically designed to choke off the economic prospects of the black laborer. Under the Jewish founder and president Samuel Gompers, the AFL successfully blundered industrialists into a whites-only hiring policy that would come to characterize the labor market for the next century. See that? So it says here that so significant was Gompers that the earlier years of American organized labor are considered, even by his detractors, to be the quote age of Samuel Gompers. From the 1880s to his last day on Earth in 1924, the Jewish AFL founder exerted unparalleled influence over the shaping of American labor policies. Okay, now we're going to drop down here, and he's talking about this guy. Okay, and it says here that, let's see here. This is a quote. It says, according to Arthur Mann, by the 20th century, few disputed his presumptuous to speak for all American labor. It was admiringly said of him that the visited kings and generals, premiers and presidents, as the undisputed voice of the white workingman. It is largely due to the influence of Samuel Gompers that every September America celebrates Labor Day. Do you ever notice why do we have Labor Day off? Because of this man. So it goes on to say that Gompers' final solution, removing the black worker, with Samuel Gompers as its president, the AFL first impulse was to follow the original labor wisdom that subordinated racial exclusion to multicultural tolerance. Gomper refused to grant AFL memberships to unions with overt provisions against the admission of blacks. This is what he said, quote, if we don't make friends, he says, if we don't make friends of the colored man, he will of necessity be justified in proving himself our enemy. They will be utilized to frustrate our, they will be utilized to frustrate our every effort for economic, social, and political improvement. Now, why aren't they saying this in this document on Wikipedia? Huh? Let's keep on going. Economic pragmatism, rather than any pretense of brotherhood, motivated that short-lived orientation. Gompers coldly calculated that in the long run, white racial unity could overcome any potential resistance by either black workers or their advocates in industry. And starting about 1891, he began to mold the AFL into a true Aryan institution that made whiteness not skill or experience the premium qualification of labor union membership. So he was hiring these white people not based on their skills and what they can do in trade, not based on their skills or experience, but based on their white skin. And as union, it says, and as union after union signed on to become affiliates under Gomper's AFL umbrella, they each began to reflect the Jewish leader Nachia's racial values. Now let's keep on going here. So we're going to jump over here. And we're going to jump over here, right? And we're going to go right here. So it says here, under Gomper's, AFL unions became the instrument of white working class racism and began systematically forcing black workers out of a variety of occupations they once dominated. See, the slaves were working for free, and then they started getting wages. So now this new guy comes in the scene. He's seeing these black people working, putting all these things into practice, building, carpentry, masonry, all that stuff. He gets mad. Say, hey, I gotta come up with a way to put these niggas back on the plantation, put these niggas back in slavery. They were still in slavery, but they would give them some type of wages. But this dude came on the scene, so I gotta put an end to that. Who says labor scholar Herbert Hill counted at least 50 strikes between 1882 and 1900 by white men against the hiring of blacks. Now, if you ever get a chance, watch this movie right here entitled American History X. I'm going to play this clip for you. Hopefully YouTube don't strike me on this scene right here. This is a good movie. Right here. Let me. So this guy is a part of the. He's a part of a Nazi movement. All right. Let me play this for you.
I think.
So this boy right here, he's having a backflash on what his family was having they were having a conversation at a dinner table. Now listen to this.
Asked Derek why it all went the way it did and where the truth is. It started earlier.
All right. Are we all meeting together for the game tonight?
Yes, definitely.
All right. Ben's Burger, 7 o'clock, and we go watch the big guy play.
Okay. Yeah.
Psyching up for the game?
Let me fast forward this on.
For that. I got it.
Might do you good. B minus.
Ooh. That's unbelievable. Unbelievable. I've never had a teacher like this. He's got like 2 PhDs. I don't know what he's doing.
So the boy right here, his name is Derek. He's talking about a black class teacher that he had. And he said when he was listening to the class teacher teach him, he said everything just started becoming so clear. And the father got mad. He said, you can listen to some things he say, but not all things.
He's teaching in our school. He's not like other teachers.
What's he got you reading?
We got this essay exam on this book, Native Son. All in this one book.
Native Son, what's that? I don't know that.
That's a big surprise.
What?
It's cool. What they do?
We're doing this whole black literature, you know. This guy Sweeney, you know.
Yeah. What? It's everywhere I look now.
What?
This affirmative action.
Oh, you know, just because you see it on the evening news.
Now you got this book, Native Son, as they are. Huh? I mean, you got to trade in great books for black books?
Okay, so if you ever get a chance, watch the movie called American History X, right? But let's keep on going. Let's keep on going to this because they are the ones, these Jewish people, and this white man, Samuel Gompers, is the one who came up with this affirmative action. It wasn't black people who came up with affirmative action. It was white folks. Let's keep on going. So it says here that. So it says black dock workers in New Orleans, for instance, were driven out of those jobs at the muzzles of loaded rifles. Loaded rifles. It says white train workers in Texas demanded in 1890 that all black workers be replaced by whites. In 1909, white train workers struck against Georgia Railroad, demanding the exclusion of black firemen. 10 blacks were murdered in a 1911 strike to remove blacks from other railroad companies. In other areas like the blacksmithing, blacks, if not totally removed, were forced into the dirtier, unskilled areas of the field. Now let's drop down here, and it says here that, so it's talking about these things, right? And it says that the same pattern of occupational eviction existed throughout the nation. It's intentionally mirroring the flow of European immigrants into the nation and into the workforce. And unions dominated by Jewish laborers were no different. The painters, the garment makers, the cigar rollers, and the waiters were largely made up of Jews. And just like their white ethnic colleagues, all excluded non-whites. Okay? Now let's keep on going. So now we're going to Gompers racial racist hate. It says the most accomplished and admirable Jew in American history, to judge by his contributions to democracy and social justice, was surely Samuel Gompers. Paul Berman, a living Jew. So now check this out. Let's see here. Okay. Let's see here. It says here that Samuel Gompers harbored a animus towards the black man that was not only problematic, but personal. He admitted that the industrialists he battled for more workers' rights cared little about their workers' race and more about their productivity, so his racist policies could not have been driven by the demands of the workplace. So now you get into the part we talk about industrial workers of the world. So it says here that Gompers took delight in telling racist stories in his public addresses and referred to blacks as superstitious, dull, ignorant, happy-go-lucky, irresponsible, lazy, immoral darkies. Why did they say that in the Wikipedia document? It says he warned America of the horrors of ignorant blacks, who were huge, strapping fellows, ignorant and vicious, whose predominating trait was animalism. Okay? So as you drop down here, it says here that according to historian Gerald Emanuel Stern, it says, quote, Gompers was more than a prejudiced observer. He was a bigot. He taunted Negroes and the Federationists in his speeches with the common demeaning epics of the day. He joined with some of the more virulent racist baiters of the day in questioning the humanity of any other white man. He never entertained a thought of anything approaching social equality for blacks. He didn't like black people, they're racist. Okay? Listen to this. According to Jewish labor historian Herbert Hill, Gompers became the major spokesman for concepts of racial and national superiority within organizing labor. By September 1905, Gompers' hatred was unrestrained, sounding more Hitlertarian than Hebrew. He wrote, quote, if the colored man continues to lend himself to work of tearing down what the white man has built up, a race hatred far worse than any ever known will result. Caucasian civilization will serve notice that its uplifting process is not to be interfered in any way. So now we're going to drop down here to Gompers and his Southern labor policy. Okay? Because I don't know if I have enough time to go through all of this. Okay? Matter of fact, we're gonna skip over this section right here. And we're going to go to this section right here. Violence, murder, massacres, and pogroms. It says Samuel Gompers proved willing to use violence to accomplish his aim to remove blacks from the American workforce. In East St. Louis, in 1917, striking whites under Gompers charged that the hiring of blacks strikebreakers has reached the point where drastic action must be taken to get rid of a certain portion of those who are already here. Within a week, whites rampaged in a orgy of bloody violence that included random lynchings, stonings, shootings, rapes, amputations, human torchings, house burnings, iron pipe beatings, and axe murders, culminating in the killing of more than 200 blacks and 8 whites, the destruction of $7 million in property, and the fleeing of at least 10,000 blacks from their homes. One arrested man was heard to say, quote, I have killed my share of the niggers today. I have killed so many, I am tired. And somebody else can finish them. The St. Louis Star reported that, quote, Negroes were flushed from the burning homes and ran for their lives. Screaming and begging for mercy, rioters formed in gangs and trooped through the streets chasing Negroes. They stood around in groups, laughing and jeering, while they witnessed the final breathings of the terror and pain wretches who crawled to the streets to die after their flesh had been cooked in their own homes. See that? And the Jewish people is behind this stuff. It goes on to say that. Now listen to what Gomper admits. Let's see. It says the murderers of course targeted and killed no capitalists in their rampage, but that didn't concern Gompers. Talking about what's going on with these killings. It says Roosevelt responded disgustedly and alluded to Gompers' own heritage. So Teddy Roosevelt was hearing about this stuff. So he says, in the past, I have had to listen to. He says, in the past, I have had to listen too often to the same kind of apologies for murders committed against the Armenians and the Jews. He says, I say to you, sir, that there can be no justification, no apology for such gross atrocities. So now we get down to W.E. Du Bois. NAACP's W.E. Du Bois investigated the pogroms of East St. Louis and declared that it was engineered by Gompers and his trade union. He says he concluded that the massacre brought the most unwilling of us to acknowledge that in the present union movement, as represented by the AFL, there is absolutely no hope of justice for an American of Negro descent. Now we jump down here. It says that this new American movement, then with its Jewish directorship, was intentionally designed to effect no less than a racial cleaning of the job market. By the end of the 1890s, American blacks, who once did virtually all the work, have been forced out of most occupations into the most demeaning, most dangerous, and dirtiest jobs, often living as near as chattel in the feudal mining camps, timber yards, and plantation hovels. Herbert Hill addressed the process of Negro displacement. Quote, labor unions frequently were the instrument that forced Negro workers out of the jobs that had held for many years by replacing them with white workers after union organization. The union is not for you. The union is not a beneficial, what do you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. It's not benefiting towards you black Negroes. It's not for you. It's for white people. All right? Now, let's do this real quick. So now we go over here to you got black leaders and the AFL. Okay? Look at W. Du Bois says 1906. The black man's greatest enemy is the trade union. You got black folks saying, "Oh, I got a union job. I'm getting paid good money." No, you're not. You tricked. You've been tricked. So it says here, black leaders felt virtually helpless in overcoming Gompers' assault on the black workingman. So W. Du Bois started writing this man, right? He started writing this dude, things like that, right? So now we're going to jump over to this section. It says here that it says other black leaders and newspapers also condemned the union movement in the strongest terms. In 1899, an Indiana leader declared trade unionism to be the greatest enemy of the Negro. A 1903 editorial in the Colored Americans said of the white immigrants that, quote, the first thing they do after landing is to organize to keep the colored man out of all kinds of industries of the country. The New York Age predicted that calamities would befall America for these policies. And in 1902, future Garveyite journalist J.E. Bruce summed up Gompers' racial policy. He says, quote, the unions are a gigantic closed corporation, a greedy, grasping, ruthless, intolerant, overbearing, dictatorial combination of half-educated white men. He says, I am against them because they are against the Negro. Now we're going to jump over here to this part. It says here, quote, the Federation is a white man's organization. The lasting effects of Gompers' racial policies. It says, Negro and Puerto Rican workers are the victims of a broad pattern of racial discrimination and segregation. There is a direct connection between the permanent condition of poverty experienced by these workers and discriminatory racial practices. Herbert Hill's testimony before a United Congress before the United Congress in 1963. Now you know about the union and things like that, right? Okay? Now check this out. So Gompers is going through all of this stuff. So now he's starting to notice things, right? So it says here that earlier in his career, Gompers himself described the condition blacks would face if not allowed to organize with all workers. And his assessment was both disturbing and prophetic. He says, quote, if the colored man is not permitted to organize, if he is not given the opportunity to protect and defend his interests, if a chance is not given him by which he could uplift his condition, the inevitable result must follow. That he will sink down lower and lower in his economic, scale, and in his conception of his rights as a worker, and finally find himself absolutely dependent, worse than chattel slavery, in the hands of unfair and unscrupulous employers. See that? See what he's starting to notice? Now, we're going to jump over here to the section called The Jewishness of Samuel Gompers. It says here that, yet from what we have known of the Nazi propaganda of Aryan supremacy, of the Goebbels and Hitlers, of their physiological and ethnic disabilities, perhaps Gompers' antecedents and physical appearance did equip him for racism. Arthur Mann, 1953. Now, they even have something after. They even have a day after Gompers called the Jewish Relief Day, in the honor of Gompers' death. Even the Rothschild was involved in the slave trade. So they even talk about that in this book, about how the Rothschilds got so rich. There's a theory going on that said that the Rothschilds got involved with I forget what the common thing is going on, but they leave out a major part. The Rothschilds were involved in the slave trade. Okay. So it says here that despite these in-house censors, Gompers in actuality sported a uniquely Jewish resume. His only formal education took place at the Jews' Free School, a Rothschild-funded Talmudic school in London. Didn't this document on Wikipedia say that he went to Jewish Free School? Okay, where he learned Hebrew. It says he learned Hebrew studying the Talmud, a process that he long later recalled was akin to studying law. Okay, so he's leaving stuff out. But what did he learn? What did he really learn in his Talmud, in his school? It says, a Rothschild-funded Talmudic school in London, where he ranked third in his class. The following is his own proud assessment of his Jewish learning experience. He says, quote, I was taught Hebrew, which it says he was taught Hebrew, not the Mongol language. He says not the Mongol language spoken and written by many Jews of the present age, but that honorable language that unlocked a literature of wonderful beauty and wisdom. The discipline gained from studying the Talmud is essentially the same as resulting from any legal study. It develops the more subtle qualities of mind. The student learns to deal with abstract problems, to make careful discriminations, to follow a line of reasoning and premise to conclusion. This legal training given to Jewish boys is fundamental in explaining the intellectual quality of many of the Jewish people. Now, Gompers was racist against Chinese people. Listen to this. Listen to what he called you. Chinese people, Asians, the Jews, and Chinese exclusion movement. The Jewish people are racist. Samuel Gompers believed in absolute white supremacy and did not discriminate in his discrimination. Blacks, of course, were subhuman. This is what he says. Blacks, of course, were subhuman. And Mexican immigration and Mexican immigrants, he decreed, was a torrent of peon poison, and as slime-legged peons with tortillas in their stomachs, but have saved some of his most shocking invective for those who comprise a third of the world's population, the people of the continent of Asia. Gompers called them coolies, Mongolians, Asiatics, or Yellow Pearl, and he targeted them before waging his corrosive campaign against the black man. See that? These Jewish people are racist. Okay? Now, let me show you that they started killing Chinese people. I bet you don't know about that. Let's go right here, because I'm still reading this. Right here. Anti-Chinese violence. Author Mann wrote that Gompers demonstrated pioneering efforts in racial slander, inciting whites to violence in the gory tradition of the Ku Klux Klan. He says, quote, "The Chinese must go." Campaigns frequently resulted in race riots and murderous attacks on agents. One expert on this subject, Roger Daniels, wrote that, quote, no one will ever know how many Chinese were murdered in California. And in one 1871 incident, a mob of over 500 Los Angeles whites massacred the Chinese, destroying their homes and businesses and killing 19 or more on the streets, ironically called Calle de los Negroes, known colloquially as Nigger Alley. At the time, only 200 Chinese were living in Los Angeles, the total population of which was less than 6,000. The scene was reminiscent of so many gruesome southern scenarios. It says, quote, "The dead Chinese in Los Angeles were hanging at 3 places near the heart of the downtown business section of the city. One of the victims hung without his trousers and minus a finger on his left hand. The trousers had been hastily pulled off because it was suspected that he had some money in them, and the finger had been severed from his hand because it had a diamond ring on it, which would not readily slip off." See what these Jewish people were doing to you, Chinaman? And you embrace him? Fools. Fools. Foolish. Foolish. Like I said, I'm still reading this. I'm halfway finished with it. So you see that they constantly keep on attacking my lessons. They know what I'm saying is true. You know what I'm saying? And that's the bottom line. There's one more thing I want to point out. Let's see. Because even in Chicago, when you go down towards Roosevelt Street, they have a town called Jewtown. I used to go down there with my father when I was little. We used to go down to Jewtown and get a Polish. If you are a person who lives in Chicago, you know what I'm talking about. There's a Jew in every city in your town, in your state or country. It's a Jew that's there. Okay? I'm not making this stuff up. Let's see here. There's something else I want to bring out. Let's see here. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. These white Jewish people that's getting away with all kind of murder, rape, all that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Let's see here. I got 10 more minutes left. I want to read something to you. Let's go here to the Rothschilds real quick. That's why I highly recommend you get these books so you can further educate yourself. You know what I'm saying? So you can see who's in power. Let's see. You go to Rothschild family. You got page 60. Okay. Now check this out. It says the case of Joseph Silverman and the Hilton affair. Now I want to show you something. How much money the Rothschilds have. It says here that, so when you read this section of this book, you will see that in the footnote it says that in 1879, the Silvermans with the Rothschilds took over the whole of 150 million bundles, 150 million bonded loan of the United States. They have been financial agents to the Navy and the State Department of the United States since 1876, and are the accredited agents of that government both abroad and at home. So the Rothschilds are the richest family in the world. How are they rich? Throughout slave labor. Now, a lady came on my channel. Under this lesson I did right here. When I talked about right here, the Jewish Holocaust exposed. Okay, and let's see here. Go to newest. Okay, so one of the brothers responded to her. Her name is Judith Kelly. Okay, and she was talking about these things. You know what I'm saying? Talking about. Let me see. He was responding to a comment that she had made on my comic board, and the brother had went in on her. You know what I'm saying? And he says that he said we can do our research because she's trying to tell us what we don't already know. So he started correcting her. Like, we don't need you to tell us anything. This is Brother Kyle Davis. He said we don't need to tell you. We don't need you to tell us anything. We can do our research on our own now. He said, and don't need you or anyone like you to tell us what is or what is not. But thanks anyway. He says, by the way, they owe us reparations to banks, insurance companies, owners of the ships, textiles companies, etc. So I commented. I told the boss, I said, I don't want any reparations. That's blood money. I don't want none of that stuff. It's blood money. They got rich of our ancestors back through blood, rape, murder, pilgrimage, all that stuff. Now, I want to do one more thing. We're going to come from this book right here again. The auction sales, Jews selling blacks. So let's go into the scriptures. Deuteronomy 28, and right here it says here that you shall build a house, but you shall not dwell in it. Then they built our ancestors built the White House, but they didn't live in it. Let's go here too. I want to show this prophecy. Your sons, this is Deuteronomy 28:32. Your sons and daughters shall be given to another people, while your eyes look on and fail with longing for them all day long. Okay? And then it says that when you go to Deuteronomy 28:68, it says you'll be sold to your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. So, let's see. Because people are trying their hard so best to try to debunk Deuteronomy 28:6, the book of Deuteronomy, and say that it doesn't apply to the African American Negroes. But it does. We got the proof and evidence. So in Deuteronomy, we just read that in verse 32, it says that Your sons and daughters should be given to another people, while your eyes look on and fail with longing for them all day long. And this book right here, auction sales, valuable family of field Negroes, Jews selling blacks. When you go here in this book, you constantly see nothing but Negroes being sold on auction blocks, and family of 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, sometimes the hundreds, being split up, and the families can do nothing but look and cry. Because this is prophesied in the book of Deuteronomy that was going to happen to us. Okay? It is prophesied. Right? And they didn't care what age the family was being sold. They didn't give a care. They didn't give a care. It says here that, let's see, if I got some more time. It says, it says, but ye shall be helpless. But ye shall be helpless. Okay? Let's see, what else we got? Your father's sons and daughters, it says, you shall father sons and daughters, but they shall not be yours, for they shall go into captivity. What are you talking about? What is the Most High talking about? So you're going to have a yoke of iron put on your necks. And the nation's going to come from a far away, because I'm going to do another lesson, once again, exposing that Esau is not the white man. Oh, wait till I bring that out, Israel. Wait till I bring that out. Wait and see. I'm proving all things. So it says that Deuteronomy 28:54. The man who is most tender and refined among you will begrudge food to his brother, to the wife he embraces, and to the last of his children. So it says here that. So when you go into this book, it says whole gangs of families, some advertising whole gangs of Negroes, some advertising families are publicly traded as objects of commerce for pure profit. One merchant has sundry Negroes and families. Another sells a plantation with a gang of about 60 Negroes with Negro houses to accommodate 50 slaves, and another Jewish merchant guarantees, quote, the lowest prices on real estate, Negroes, horses, and etc. Jump down here, it goes to say that one merchant sells 40 valuable Negroes consisting of house servants and field slaves. Another sells a prime gang of 30 or 43. Another merchant sells choice Negroes, 80 at one time, and yet another has 65 prime Negroes at a private sale. Children 5 years old, 9 years old, and it says 11, 16, 17, 2 months old, even infants, are all sold without any concern for their welfare or for their families. One advertised a valuable family of field slaves, including an infant and a 2-year-old, both of whom the Jewish seller already determined to be field slaves. See that? So all these prophecies pertains toward the so-called Negroes that's been scattered all over across the earth. All across the earth. Okay? So when someone tries to come along and say the book of Deuteronomy is not true, and they try to say it's added, don't listen to those fools, because they know they're not the chosen people. Don't listen to those dummies. But I hope all this lesson uploads. This is the exposure. This is the exposure of Samuel Gompers and the Union and the AFL, the American Federation of Labor. Samuel Gompers exposed. The union is not for you black men and black women. It never was and never will be. It's all a trick. It's all a lie. Stop listening to these white devils. They're liars. With that being said, I say peace and shalom. Click subscribe. Thumbs up. They might block this video. Peace.